Growing a crop like our soybeans involves several processes which can be grouped into 5 basic stages. Number 1, you plant the crop. 2, you plant the crop. The third part is you look after it while it grows. Number 4, you harvest it. And finally, number 5, you take it to market for your returns. We're now focusing on the third stage, which is how we look after the crop while it's growing. On our last video, we looked at how we feed the crop in so many different ways. And on this video, we're going to be looking at protecting the crop from all the things that want to harm it. We're talking about weeds, we're talking about insects, and we're talking about disease. Stay with us. Greetings from the farm. Welcome back to the Mondo Farms channel. It's so good to have you back with us again here. My name is Chisha Folotea. We're now on part 4 on our soybeans farming basic series. We've had part 1 where we planned, part 2 where we planted, part 3 where we fed the crop, and now in part 4, we're going to look after it and protect it. By the way, where I am today is one of our fields which we call Florida 1. It's located at the southwest corner of the farm and has the Chongwe River running along the bottom as its border. Its location next to the river and basically being a floodplain is always going to be a major factor in how, when, and what we can farm here. But that's a story for another day, and I've been working on a video telling the story of the soybeans crop that we had here this season and 1 or 2 adventures that we had with it. And we'll have that for you on the Mondo Farms channel very soon. Speaking of the soybeans, what we had here has already been harvested and it has just been finished threshing, and we shall be talking about threshing on the next part 5 in the soybeans farm basic series. When I first started farming soybeans, I was almost overwhelmed by all of the details about the different herbicides that we learned we needed to apply. I can't lie, it can be quite confusing. There are all sorts of herbicides with many different names of products and active ingredients. Let me try and simplify it as much as possible. Conventional herbicides come in 2 basic categories. The first one is pre-emergent herbicides. The second one is post-emergent herbicides. So post-emergent herbicides, they kill the weeds that have already come out of the ground, the ones around your crops. Pre-emergent herbicides, that's the ones we used in the last video when we're planting. They're the ones we apply to kill the weed seeds even before they emerge out of the ground. Emergent, emerge. In this context, we're talking about the plants emerging out of the ground. By the way, I'm not sure if I should be saying emergent or emergence or emergency. Look, the people of this area, this land that we now call Zambia, have had a very interesting relationship with the English language ever since we were first introduced to it by the guys who came with a Bible in one hand and a gun in the other hand. We have been learning how to speak this magical language called English. I'm sure one day we shall become as confident as our brothers and sisters in West Africa who have now developed their own pidgin English. And I'm starting to see the signs in the way Zambians speak English. There's a saying that we have, Vina momene wa imvelela. Remember in the previous video when we talked about another classifications of herbicides, and we said some are selective and some are non-selective. We said that non-selective herbicides, now they don't select at all, just as the name suggests. So they will kill everything they come into contact with. They are used a lot in agriculture in order to clear fields and vegetation before you bring in your crop. There's a term that you always hear called pre-plant burn down.
Tuna spray pala kwati. Bai, nasebenza mo. Nasebenza pala kwati nda. Awuzive yayoma.
Selective herbicides, on the other hand, now they're very special and they've been designed with a specific crop in mind, and their job is to protect that crop. They'll kill everything else around it apart from that crop. So you've got crops like cereals, your maize, wheat, rice, and everything. You've got sunflower, you've got tobacco, and you've got legume crops like soya beans that we're growing here. There's a selective herbicide for them. Let's put the two words together, emergence and selection. After we planted, we then applied a pre-emergence selective herbicide that was killing the weeds around our soybean seeds while they're still in the ground. What's the problem with weeds? Weeds, weeds, weeds. What can you say about weeds that hasn't been said before? We all know this problem with weeds. Weeds will come along, they'll grow near the crops you want to grow, and they'll compete with them. They'll take away the nutrients in the soil. They'll drink all the water from the soil, and they will become taller than your crops and block it from getting the necessary sunlight. One other major problem with weeds is that they also carry insects and disease as well. So we have to spend a lot of time and effort to get rid of weeds. That is a major component of crop husbandry, which means how we protect our plants. So our soybeans has now germinated. It's nicely coming out, and we need to come up and apply a, let's get it right, post-emergent selective herbicide. All right, let's talk about the herbicide issue. Let's address the elephant in the room. Yes, here at Mondo Farms, we use herbicides. We chose to use herbicides because at the size and scope of the crops that we grow, using manual methods, manual weeding, etc., it just wouldn't be cost effective for us. There's this whole debate about organic agriculture versus chemical agriculture and all of that, and we are not taking one side or the other. We're just here trying to make a living, trying to develop our farm so we can look after our families and help feed the nation. Like most modern farmers, we don't really take a position, and we've seen the benefits of both organic compounds as well as conventional chemical compounds. And we use them both depending on the circumstances. We might use this one or we might use that one. There are many products on the market available as selective herbicides that we can use to protect our legume crops like soya beans, beans, and groundnuts. The one that we chose this year is supplied by AgriFocus, and it's called quizalofop. Now, we really like this product because it has 2 active ingredients, meaning that we get more bang for our buck. Quizalofop, as you can tell from the name, is made up of 2 products. One of them is quizalofop, and the other one is formasen. So, as I said, with one application, it provides us with help against 2 types of weeds, broadleaf weeds and grass weeds.
Spraying herbicide mu soya beans, chemical quizalofop. Sotamanga na herbicide because ma weeds afuna chita attack mu soya beans yato kuno ku Florida 1. Yeve soya beans yato kuno ku Florida 1 haioneka bwino maningi. So tukushineko herbicide
So let's talk a little bit about some of the technical things that you hear on channels like this one. Farming is about the application of science to nature. And if you're going to farm successfully, then it's important to become comfortable and find a way of learning some of the technical details. We're talking about some of the technical products. You heard me talking about emergence, post-emergence, selective, non-selective. You're talking about things like photosynthesis, things like chlorophyll. Yes, you can farm without having all of that knowledge. But if you're going to farm successfully, you need to get a little bit deeper into some of those things. It protects you in so many ways. One is you know more about what you're doing on your farm and you can get better results. Number two, it saves you money because, for example, let's talk about active ingredients. That's really important. You go to this shop, this supplier, this agrochem dealer, and they tell you, for this one, you need to use this product. You go to another one, you buy it. You go to another one, for this one, I think use this product. You buy both those products, you try to apply them, and then you find out that they actually contain the same active ingredient. Oh my goodness me. A lot of people have had challenges in farming because of their unwillingness, unwantingness, whatever, to get into some of the technical details. I know that if you're watching a channel like this, a video like this one, then you're at that stage in your farming journey where you need to know how we farm using technical details, using the applications of science, and how we do it successfully. So back to the application of the post-emergence selective herbicide quizalofop that we had applied. It didn't take us long for us to see how it was being effective. Like here is Tyson observing some of our crops on Florida 3, and he saw that the soya beans were standing nice upright. It was looking very healthy, but all of the weeds around it were not doing well at all. They were suffering. They were not having a good time at all.
So we're here at Florida 3, and this is block A, where we have our soybeans. Our soybeans grow up looking very healthy. And here we sprayed the quizalofop and formasen, which is working now and killing off the grass weeds and the broad weeds. It's a selective post-emergency herbicide.
So one thing you notice in that clip is the way that the weeds were dying. They weren't dying right away, and it was all slow, and it takes a day or two. And that is because the selective herbicide that we had applied, it's a systemic herbicide, and it works after it is ingested by the roots into the plant. The opposite side of the spectrum for systemic herbicides is what are called contact herbicides. Now, if you are following the science that we're doing here, you can see right away how and why it works. If the selective herbicide was a contact herbicide, then it would touch the soybeans and start affecting them straight away. But as a systemic that has to go in through the leaves and the roots and get absorbed into the system, then once it's taken up by the soybeans, which inevitably it will, the soybeans will say, kasi ndiwe mzanga, iwe ndiwe wakwatu, ndiwe mkwasu, iwe ndi mkwasu iwe. So it doesn't affect it, and it's welcome. They make tea, everybody sits down. So that's how these selective post-emergent herbicides work. So as you've seen, We apply our post-emergent herbicides just after the plant is coming up while it's still young and tender. And that's not surprising because we take more care of the crops and other organisms while they are young. But even when the crops have grown a little bit more, the weeds will still be there. And like for example, on this farm, we have this horrible red vondwe that grows all over the place. We have Nakasokopio blackjack that also grows over the place, and others whose names I haven't quite learned yet. More technical stuff that I need to brush up on. So as the crop gets older, we stop with the herbicides and we move into old-fashioned manual methods. There's a couple of reasons why we cut down on the herbicides at this stage. Number one, okay, yes, these are chemicals. They have warning labels on them. I know we are conscious of the dangers that they are. And as we get closer to the food production stage, we do try and wind down on our application of chemicals on them. Number two, herbicides cost money. So at some point, the labor component has to take over the cost component that if we had to continue buying herbicides. Number three, I think there's not a lot of herbicides that I've come across that you apply into soya beans later on as it grows. So as the soya beans has grown a little bit more, we change to old-fashioned methods. And the first one of this is slashing. And we slash the areas around the fields and in between the blocks.
Yasomwe nakambira wazono kuti mkaenda so mzangi road ya pakati chitira tudoyo na uzwa kula pacha. Nayo tukwezeke nayo mjakuli motoka.
Slashing of the grass around the fields and in between the blocks also helps us to keep our farm neat. We like to have a neat and orderly workplace because I believe that it affects the mindset of our team. It makes them more prouder of their working environment.
Hapa tambo cha manual weeding. Tuona kuti tambo spraying a quizalofop. Taona kuti na ma flowers. Pati ngambogwesa ma flowers na herbicide. So ma redis wachako aje ma blocks utaoneka kuna tuma weeds.
Later, when the crops are more grown and are flowering and podding, we send in our teams to carry out manual weeding like this.
Mauzo ali pafupi na chitechera mziachosa. Aya so aya mwanyula nyule nipona pafupi na.
The slashing and manual weeding is something we continue doing throughout the time that our crops are in the ground. I can't lie, it's not easy, especially at the height of the rainy season when plants are growing, as well as with the large size of our farms. That's why I'm so grateful that our leaders on the ground like Pethias, our farm supervisor here at Winterthorn, have really bought into the importance of this and keep pushing the message to the team. Here he is showing one of the teams that had done some slashing and weeding at Clinton 1 Block 3, that they still had some work to do.
Guys, wamenenzo kusebenzera kuno ku timu yokwapa mbali msoya beans. So granko ni mkatu area mkatu mwa soya beans. Mchoseko ivimozi vikulu vivoneka mkatu mwe. Then kuno bwana munikulangize kwa 40 kwa mwasira. If mauzo mvinyule munyulemo mngene mvinyula munyulamo. Then kuno kwapa tifungo pereza iselandi yatu ipera mu milisio. So mfungo kwapa kupera muti mu mbali mwa milisi. Wamvera ka? kuno mrodi simungoiko apa rodi kuendopera kufika kuja kulasta so kuapera ntoni mkasiriza then munyuranyure vimozi viri mukati mwa soya beans.
Once the plants gets bigger, we get what is called canopy closure, and the weeds find it hard to grow to the point that they've become a real threat to the well-being of our crop. Here's an example of what Tyson found when he scouted our crop on Bombay Field in early March. The crop was quite mature by then.
Looks amazing. The vigor of the plant, in terms of the flowering and the podding. So we've got pods everywhere. And the health looks very, very amazing. The pathways are becoming impassable now due to the growing of the soybeans. No pest infestation here. You can tell by the leaves not being perforated. And the weeds are only showing in areas that are open, like here where we did weeding, but then they didn't remove the weeded grass out of the field, and we still have them and they are growing back up again. But in areas where they've closed, we don't have weeds. The weeds are being suppressed. Like this guy here, he's not going anywhere. They've closed canopy.
All right, we've settled down again now. Now we need to talk about the use of insecticides and fungicides. You may have seen one of our other videos where we were battling with armyworms at our other farm, Kimberley. Armyworms can be a major pest with maize. But fortunately, this season, this crop, insect pests haven't been a major challenge. Our approach to insecticides is to keep scouting our crops, looking for problems and finding and dealing with them when we found them. For example, here is our farm manager, Tyson, scouting our crops that we had at Westgate in mid-February, and look what he found.
So we have these caterpillar pests that are chewing on the leaves like this. And they're folding too. So we do have chemicals, insecticides that can work on these, because these are just caterpillars, and we'll spray either metacloroprid or emamectin benzoate. Looking at the percentage threshold, we're basically okay. We're not having high threat.
As he mentioned in the clip, we treat such visitors with a range of insecticides, and we make those visitors thoroughly unwelcome. Now let's talk about fungicides, or is it fungicides? Whichever way you pronounce it. Our approach this year was to look for the problems and deal with them. And that's exactly what we did. Whenever we'd find something, we would spray against it using one of the range of fungicides. Now, I can't really show you much footage of the guys spraying against fungicides because it didn't happen very often, and we don't always have one of the cameras on the farm available as and when everything happens, right?
Right.
What's that, buddy?
Nah, not leaves.
Okay.
Many leaves are
Yes,
maybe the only notice it on up on my zooming. If you look at my yellow spots.
Okay.
But it's not compared to the so Captain have the movie and the battle. Now, suppose more in the fuck up a more. The material now. More in the idea.
Among the many things we've learned over the past few years of farming here is that we shouldn't panic every time we scout our crops and we find some insects or we find some signs of insect damage or we see a disease in our crops. We now know and accept that these things happen in nature. Back in the beginning, when we were growing vegetables at a small scale, every sign of problems would have us scurrying to the agro dealer or the agronomist to look for a solution. But our perspective has changed now for several reasons. Number one, we are now growing crops at a large scale. When you're growing hectares and hectares of soybeans or maize, your perspective changes. You realize that these things happen in nature. So even if you find an infestation of a certain insect pest in one area or some disease in one of your fields, it doesn't mean that your whole world is ending. You tend to be more patient. You also realize that different fields, according to their location, their history, the neighboring crops, the wind direction, they will have different problems. So if we have a challenge at Westgate, 2 Block D, it doesn't mean that we have to be so worried about our crops on Alaska 4, does it? Secondly, we've learned a little bit about the economic threshold for damage due to pests. Just because you've got some insects in some of your crops won't necessarily affect your yields. So if you look at a chart like this, which is a major tool that we use, it shows us how much damage or loss we shall expect at each level of leaf infestation. And this guides us to know at what point we should be moving in with a pesticide. And lastly, we now know a lot more about some of the dangers and threats to our crops. For example, when it comes to insects, we know what a lot of the common insects that we find in our fields for specific crops look like, and we know how dangerous they are. We know whether they are sucking pests or whether they're chewing pests. When it comes to diseases, we know how a disease manifests itself and how quickly it spreads, and we do a lot of mitigation to prevent some of that spread. We also keep a lot of pesticides in stock here at the farm, and we are normally able to identify a problem and treat it quickly without resorting to outside help. All of this makes our approach to crop protection much calmer.
Phineas, alo, vakukamwa vili kuti, muzivala vakukamwa, vonse vetima. Tisikamba vindu vimozi sho. Wait. Mukasiriza apa pamene kablogo akamene mtenge vakukamwa. Magravu vakukamwa vonse viliko vosevenzera. Kimbali nanga vakuno.
So there you have it. In part 4 of the soybeans farming basic series, we've covered how we protected our crops from all the harm. And you know what? We are blessed that it wasn't a big deal. We didn't have any major problems. But knowing the luck of a farmer, next season, it could be different. We could have weeds, we could have disease, and we could have a crazy major pest infestation. So many long words. Now, we're actually very glad that things were easy here at Winterthorn because the insect pest problem we had with armyworm at Kimberley this season, that was a major problem. The soybean story is almost done for this season, and there's only a little bit left. The next phase is harvesting, threshing, taking it to market. We'll have all of that for you right here on the Mondo Farms channel as the story progresses. If you like the video, then please show that by giving it a like, by pressing the thumbs up button. And if there's people that you want to share this video with that need to know a little bit more about crop protection in soybeans, then please do that by forwarding it to them on your WhatsApp or Facebook or other social media channels. And if you want to watch more videos like this, and the easiest way to do that is to press the subscribe button. And if you press the bell icon, then YouTube will let you know as and when another video comes along. The Mondo Farms channel has had an amazing growth over the last couple of years. We did our first video back in 2021, and it has reached amazing levels. I keep using the word amazing because currently it's hard to describe how I'm feeling. We just clocked 10,000 subscribers. I'll say it again, 10,000 subscribers. I remember when we reached our first 1,000, our first 5,000, I sent something on the family WhatsApp group and says, guys, we've reached 5,000. And that was just a few weeks ago. I want to thank each and every one of you that has made the Mondo Farms channel a part of your lives. My name is Chisha Folotia. I'll see you soon on the Mondo Farms channel. Shale nipo. Bye-bye.